David, welcome to Digital Transformation Byte Size. This is a show where I talk to thought leaders in the digital transformation, data analytics, intelligent automation, and technology space. Welcome today, sir. How are you?
I'm grand. Thank you, Kieran. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Tell us about yourself. What are you involved in on a day-to-day basis?
What am I involved in? There are two main ventures that I'm involved in. I'm the CEO of a media technology company called the Media Exchange Group. We're launching a platform that allows brands to directly, simply and cheaply buy television and audio advertising space and know precisely where it is, and also be able to trade it on, which is in a market which is a little bit traditional and has at times fallen behind the likes of your social medias and Facebooks and Googles, who make it very, very easy to buy advertising space. This is something that we're very, very excited about, and we're looking at launch in UK, the US, and a couple of international markets as well. On top of that, I set up a business a few years back on providing commercial advice to those who want to get into the eSports world. And I've advised a number of governments, brands, businesses who are in the market, and those looking to come into the market, and also investors in terms of giving an idea of what the shape of the market is and where the opportunity lies.
Oh, fantastic. Well, here, I think we're going to diverge off on a couple of things here today. A lot of people would say that television has had its time and that magazine and print advertising's just gone. So is it kind of paradoxical that you're going online or going offline and into TV at a time when everybody else or trends suggest online is the place to be?
So I think that the rumors of television and audio's death are well exaggerated. I think that one of the key things that people have to understand is that television, and I'm just going to use television and audio, like sort of combine them together in this. They are the best forms of content. You can't argue with it. Okay, like a social media post is not in any way sit up to Game of Thrones. There's no comparison. And TV is like, we're in the golden age of the box set right now. Okay, and the podcast. Okay, this is the 1920s. So it was for cinema. This is the 2020s for box sets are amazing, and they're demonstrated on streaming platforms such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, but also all of the television channels are starting to push this out there as well. And they haven't quite got it right yet in terms of finding the commercial model for it. But this is a fabulous time for content. And the advertising is excellent on this as well. There'd be very few people under the age of 30 who can't quote the Old Spice advert that was at the Super Bowl. Okay, these are really entertaining and engaging ways of getting to your audience. And they're part of any balanced portfolio if you are a serious brand. However, getting that advertising space, understanding it, measuring it, making the most out of it is very difficult. You get ROI out of it because it's such a powerful medium, but it's very much still stuck in the 1960s in terms of its infrastructure that's there. And the result of this has been that we're seeing a shrink in the amount of advertising, revenues that go into television, but that will manifest itself elsewhere. But if only this becomes a bit more accessible, then it's easier to see. Now, certain markets are more robust than others. So the US is an extraordinarily robust television market. There's a lot of competition. There's a hell of a lot of content out there. And at some point, some of these streaming platforms like Netflix will need to advertise. They only make net margins of 2 or 4% because they're paying for so much content. So they're going to need to find some ways of being able to do that. And people will pay for that as long as they can see that good content's coming in. But if this isn't sorted out, then the money will start to dry up essentially for this good content, and consumers will suffer. Consumers don't mind paying or having advertising for really good content. They hate it when they're getting advertising for what is ultimately crap content. Okay, and we see a large amount of advertising online that's that's been hoovered up by Google, Facebook, and to a certain extent Amazon, and then all of the other independent tradable pieces are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as brands get less and less trusting of that, because they see it as poor advertising space, and because it's so much easier to measure what's going on Facebook on their respective platforms. So to answer your question in a less roundabout way, Like they are cracking media or television streaming platforms and audio. It just doesn't have quite the infrastructure yet to really take advantage of that.
Do you think online platforms that focus truly on advertising, or data is monetized, it's purely advertising, do you think they've harmed the television industry and the advertising space within that broadcast arena? Or do you think they've forced it to up its game?
A combination of the two. When they're becoming more and more into direct competition, but it's quite difficult to compare, for instance, Google search to a television advert. Okay, yes, exactly where the Google search advert is. You can just log on to Google and see what part of the page you're on. Okay, you can also find out who's been on and everything else that comes with it. And that measurability has meant that this is a particularly powerful tool that brands are very, very keen on. And television doesn't have that at this moment in time, or it's very difficult to actually do that, to use that, because a lot of the information is withheld. It's either held with broadcasters who are using they're using that flexibility so that they can place television advertising in the place that's best for them, okay, at that moment in time, but may not be best for them in the long run, or it's been withheld by groups like media agencies and third parties who ultimately significantly mark up what television space there is, and withhold what that looks like to brands who are being a bit more, I suppose, discerning about how much has been spent. Now, the problem you have here is that brands and marketers in particular are putting more and more emphasis into measurable outputs, and so that nicely aligns with the online piece. Whilst at the same time, they are going with systems which are simple to use. So broadcasters have lost revenue as a consequence, but they have suddenly woken up to this fact that they're going to have to make this much more accessible and far more measurable. And we're starting to see a plethora of digital platforms as a consequence.
Yeah. One space that has always fascinated me is the eSports space. And you mentioned earlier on that you're involved in that. I've seen Stafford's University, I think it's Staffordshire, have introduced an eSports degree. Tell us a little bit about that space. What's happening? Who's successful? How's it broadcasting and advertising itself?
Well, there's a number of questions there. So the esports space is a fascinating space to be in right now. It's one of the few growth industries out there. It's been hit by the pandemic, but it's very robust in these sort of circumstances, because you can do stuff remotely as long as you have a decent internet connection. And what we're seeing is a whole generation of people and a geographic shift of where entertainment comes from and what is valued in entertainment. So a whole generation of people are less interested in sports, or see video gaming as an alternative to sports. And you have big portions of the world, like China, like India, to a certain extent South America as well, who recognize that they are world class at competitive video gaming. And the result is that with that, you're seeing a truly global market, where the infrastructure is still being set up, which is follows the following format. You have the publishers or game developers, so your Activision Blizzards, your Riot Games, generally people who are owned by Tencent, who have designed the game itself. You have tournament operators or organizers, who are these multinational companies which put on these enormous competitions, which fill out, prior to the pandemic, stadiums 90,000 people plus. You have streaming platforms like Twitch, which is owned by Amazon, streaming to the world, and you have professional teams involved in that. And off the back of that, you have a huge fan base and a vast number of different tech services and products and all sorts of other things starting to emerge as part of it. So you're seeing the birth of a global, exciting industry where you have a very, very wealthy demographic looking at it as well. So it's full of potential, but very much in its infancy still.
I would have thought that people now locked down at home would be playing more games than ever, and therefore the esports industry would be growing at a rate of knots. Is that playing out, or are people not playing as much?
They're certainly playing more. There's a lot more engagement in some ways. As with a number of industries which have, rich layers to them, some are doing very, very well and some are not doing so well. So the live events groups are finding it much more difficult because a larger revenue stream they had were people turning up to these events. And, as a consequence, you do have a mixed reaction. And it's also one thing that's is commonly missed on the esports piece is that, when you do have restrictions like travel restrictions or whatever, certain teams can't play each other because they're in different regions. The lag that happens on the video games is quite important. And when split seconds do make a difference between winning a multi-million dollar prize pot or not, you can see already that there's that those restrictions do have, a little bit of a gravitational effect on growth. However, if we look at Activision, who have had an absolutely cracking year, their share price is up, and as are their profits. We're seeing a large amount of different uses of things like Fortnite. Fortnite is now not just a gaming platform. People go on it to experience music concerts, to interact in other ways. There's all sorts of things going on with this, and specifically in the esports area, there's a renewed interest in these brands, which are in some cases lifestyle brands. They are, and technology products which are highly scalable. These are doing very well, and there's a renewed interest in trying to invest in that, as well as trying to understand how the whole system works. But to put it into context here, the esports industry at best is, expected to be worth, $1.5 billion US, maybe $2 billion US. Okay, now that's small fry in comparison to traditional sports. So, it's got a long way to go before it gets to the sort of dizzying heights of where the NFL is or anything else. But some of the hyperbole that goes around it just needs to be put into context. But right now, if you can get it in a way which you don't lose money and you're able to stay profitable in it, then this is a potentially a great time to be getting into that. But working out how to do that is a tricky business.
Where do you see the esports industry moving? Because what you've described there is Twitch turning into more a broadcast and event platform, moves it away from that original gaming heritage.
No, a very good question. So to understand where it's going, you have to understand what the foundations of it are in terms of the money and where the money flow comes from. So you have an audience which typically is university educated, not always, but it has a disproportionate number of college grads as part of it all. It as in the US, you have the average salary being well over $50,000 US. So they have a fair bit of spending capacity, and they don't have products to spend it on. And that's important. They are they are twice as likely to buy designer clothing than someone who is in their 40s. They are also they're very vocal and discerning and generous with their money. They donate their cash to streamers and also to to professional gamers to be entertained. So you're seeing a large amount of pent up cash here that's not actually going anywhere. It's been given away in donations. To give an example, the International, which is one of the largest events and certainly the largest prize pool in the esports industry, the majority of the prize pool is donated by fans. And if you put it this way, if you win the International, you win over $40 million US. So there's a large amount of money potentially there. So where is the industry going? Well, the industry is desperately keen on products or tech services that can enhance the experience and to make esports something a bit more of a lifestyle piece rather than just some people watching games and so forth. So just to put that into context, there are going to be a large number of products which enhance that lifestyle, which we're starting to see emerging, and we see the grassroots of that happening now. And we see some scalable tech which some of the companies, I can mention a few, are really like quite exciting what they have to offer, because that's the potential of the potential of enhancing the experience of the individual for money-making opportunities, and for really kicking on in the industry is really only starting to happen now, and that's it's an exciting time to look at it.
In the digital transformation space, I think everyone who never thought they could use Zoom before, or FaceTime was for kids, is now realizing that it's a necessity. So I think anything and everything that is broadcastable and digitizable, if that's such a word, will really influence where people look, see, spend, create in the future. So it's fascinating you're actually in both. I love the fact you're in esports to view it, because it just comes across as such a fascinating, interesting space. But the media side of things as well, that is a paradox where audience are going up and advertising revenues gone down, because you've almost got a captive audience. So how do you monetize a captive audience that can't get out of their houses?
In a pandemic or any type of downturn, the first budget that gets cut is your marketing budget, and the biggest part of your marketing budget is typically your TV budget, and it's because you have to make large commitments up front, and that lack of flexibility is ultimately hurting the industry a bit. But I think that the key aspect that comes with this is that content, because we've hit saturation point in the amount of content that we can consume. Even when we're dual screening, we can't actually consume any more content. So therefore, really premium content will shine through in a way that your digital stuff that just flies up on screen or pop-ups just really doesn't cut the mustard anymore. So if you're able to create really good content, you will get those audiences. It's just a question of how you monetize that, and I think that system is due a bit of an overhaul.
David, thank you so much for coming on to Digital Transformation Byte Size. It's fantastic to hear about the media space and how well television and advertising is doing. It's great to hear about the esports space and the potential for individuals and businesses to grow in that. I appreciate your time. If anybody wants to find out a little bit more, David, how do they find out?
Well, the obvious way is to contact me on LinkedIn, but in terms of probably LinkedIn, or feel free to drop me an email on david@mediaexchange.group.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.